Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Podcast. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your support, man. Things are going really good because of you guys, and I want to thank you for sharing this Belief Cast with everyone. And like I always say, for believing in me, that means so much. I want to thank our sponsor, Veracity Networks, also for believing in me and sponsoring this Belief Cast week in and week out. I'm grateful once again to have another amazing person that I've known for a while now, and I'm grateful that she's been willing to come and share her story. We're here at Wasatch Recovery bright and early, and I have Tedi Searle. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for letting me come.
Yeah. So let me give you a little background on Tedi. I first met her when she was teaching at Brighton High School, and she was so gracious to actually have me come, I think, speak 3 times to your classroom.
Yeah.
And that was a great experience for me. I went to Brighton High School, so it was great to go back and go, this is kind of weird. I'm talking to these kids, and I used to go to school here.
Yeah, walk in the same halls.
Walk in the same halls. It looked the same. They're remodeling it now, but which is kind of a bummer because I like the old stuff, but I get it. It's falling apart. And
The round hallways.
Yeah. So let me a little background on Tedi. She's a fitness coach and runner, public speaker, health educator, and a recovering perfectionist, which I want to get into more of. I know what you mean by that, but I'd like to get into why you say that. She's a Washington State native, and she's been calling Utah home for the past 20 years. She's a longtime advocate for outdoor adventure and physical wellness, and she's a strong believer in healthy mindset. And that's where you and I think we connect really well because we're both kind of on that same trajectory there. And especially for those for ADHD and anxiety, which I know that's some stuff that you've gone through yourself, which we'll get into. And then you love to run. You took up trail running, and you've never looked back. You love teaching teenagers and speaking to inspire positive change in people's lives. She's a collegiate and high school educator, like we talked about, and a fitness coach and retreat host. Anyway, The list goes on and on and on. But thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, where did you grow up and some of your background?
So I originally grew up in Washington State. My parents got divorced when I was about 8 years old.
Okay.
And so I kind of lived in several different places, moved around in Washington State since I was a really young kid. But when I left Washington, at that point, I was living on the reservation.
Oh, okay.
And so that's an experience all in of itself.
Sure, yeah. Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I'm an only child biologically, and then my mom got remarried. And when she remarried my stepdad, he had 6 kids.
Oh, wow.
From his first wife. And then my parents had my baby sister, which I say baby. It's just because she's 20 years younger than me. But she's, now in her 20s. But so I grew up in the middle of 8, essentially. My youngest sister wasn't born until I was a freshman in college. So I didn't really grow up with her in the home when I was growing up. But I grew up with a bunch of step siblings, and that in itself is a challenge.
Right.
I was super excited to have step siblings. I'm not sure that they were so excited at the time, but now we get along really great.
Yeah.
And they're fantastic. It takes some work. But yeah, so I grew up in this kind of blended home, so to say, on the reservation in Wapato, Washington.
Yeah, wow. So talk about that for a minute, being on the reservation.
When we first moved there, I was in high school when we first moved to the reservation, and I remember stepping into the high school for the first day, super nerve-wracking, and I thought I was in another country.
Right.
All I saw was Hispanic and natives, and I literally was like, am I even in America?
Yeah.
I came from a predominantly white, this really small high school out in the country in Washington, and then we moved into Wapato on the reservation, and it's this beautiful valley that they produce all of this agriculture. Apples are huge in Yakima, Wapato area. And if you ever want good apples, I highly recommend that.
Okay, great. I love apples.
Yeah. And you see them, it's funny because I see them in the grocery store all the time here in Utah, and I'm like, oh, look, it's my home.
Yeah.
Support Yakima farmers. But yeah, so I walked in to Wapato High School, and I was like one of the only white girls and one of the only white people in the hallways. And that was a complete culture shock for me at the time. And I am so grateful for it because it really blinded me to race, color. It became like people are people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter.
So what a great experience to have, and to have that perspective at a young age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, I wouldn't necessarily want to go back and live there because of some of the things that there are lots of, in fact, I was back there just a couple months ago, and there can be a lot of alcohol and drug issues, as well as they have a lot of different challenges that come along with living there. But I'm really grateful for the experience as a teenager, and I feel like it made me a lot more well-rounded isn't the right word, but it was a great experience. And I still have some really amazing friends from high school that I love to go see and hang out with. Well,
so how old were you again when your parents divorced?
I was in between 7 and 8 years old.
So if you don't mind, talk a little bit about that experience. Obviously it's a difficult time for everybody. So how did you handle that, and what was going through your mind at that time?
I don't know how well I handled it. I was 7 to 8 years old, but I do remember distinctly, and you have to remember too, I didn't have any siblings because I was the only child. And so, I think that makes a difference. I look at some of the teens and kids that I've worked with, and everybody handles their parents getting divorced a little bit differently. And I think it depends on when they've experienced that too.
Right, sure.
But I think a lot of times kids can rely on each other if they have siblings, that then they can kind of bond a little bit over that.
Yeah, kind of lean on them a little bit.
Yeah. And so I just remember I was like, oh, I didn't get it. I remember I was visiting my dad for the summer. My dad lives up in Brigham City, actually. And that's how I came to be in Utah, is because it's been my second home, even growing up, because I lived in Washington, but then I would come here during the summers. Okay. And I was visiting my dad. He had changed jobs and he was no longer in Washington. And so he was here in Utah, and I came to visit him. And as a kid, I was just completely naive and didn't realize, I just thought Dad was at a job. I didn't realize that my parents were getting divorced. And so he was so I remember him having sitting me down and having that conversation of this is my home. I'm not going to be coming to Washington. And it just blew my brains. I was like, what? I don't, and so growing up, it was really hard because I always felt torn in between kind of two places and two parents. I'd cry when I left my mom. I'd cry when I left my dad.
Yeah, sure.
But it does kind of also, as the years go on and time goes on, it becomes just what it is.
Right.
You don't know that. But I learned how to fly by myself at a very young age.
Sure. Yeah. Well, again, sometimes, the toughest things we go through ends up being a blessing in the end, even though it was a difficult time, and, we could always say, I wish it was different, but it isn't. It is what it is. Right.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure you can look back on that and go, man, look how it's kind of even blessed me to this day.
Yeah. There's still things that I think kind of come up from that. Anybody who's been through divorce, either as a child or as a individual in a relationship, I think you can't walk away from that and say it doesn't leave some scars of some sort.
Sure.
But I do totally feel like it has made me way more compassionate and understanding, and able to help people that I may not have been able to otherwise.
Right. Well, and when I first met you, and watching you, we were just talking about this when you got here, how, teaching those kids at Brighton and how you interacted with those kids, and I saw how they interacted with you. And just, I could tell, man, you loved what you did. You're good at it. The kids trusted you. They felt safe. And I think, like you said, you learn to have that compassion and see things differently. You learn to not judge anybody, being on the reservation. You're like, man, we're all people. Yeah. I mean, all these little things lead up to when I first met you, just seeing that, it makes a lot more sense to me.
Oh, yeah.
You're just, you're that good person because of those things.
I try. I do. I love teaching and I love my students, and they're a good group.
Right.
And I've had several I've had some amazing students throughout the years.
Right.
So they're phenomenal.
So I know, you talk about that, you're a strong believer of a healthy mindset, and especially around ADHD and anxiety. Can you talk a little bit about why and why that's, you're so passionate about that?
Yeah. So I am ADHD myself, which I didn't really learn about until I was in college. Mm-hmm. And so I see it in my own life, and I can spot it in students so fast. Granted, in the education system, we can't be like, hey, your kid's ADHD, because you're not, we're not medical, we're not doctors. But I can see a lot of the things that I struggle with myself, I can see my students struggle with. Although ADHD does affect everybody a little bit differently. But looking back, I can kind of describe some stuff better. I just remember when I was going through high school, I was always a mover and a shaker, and so I'd always get in trouble for talking.
Right.
I'm really good at that.
Yes.
Even as a young kid, I remember in like second, third grade, my teachers like telling my parents or telling my mom that that I talked a lot or that I was fidgety. And I actually got held back in kindergarten because I think it was learning disabilities that were related to ADHD, although we didn't know it at the time.
Right.
But anyways, it was just harder for me to learn. And I don't exactly remember what it was that I didn't know and that it was hard for me to learn at that point in my time because I was super young.
Right.
But when I got into high school, like it was impossible for me to sit down and do homework. Because I would rather be out riding horses, playing sports, and doing all these other things. I also remember when I switched from, junior high, basically, over to high school. The first day, I don't even think it was the first day. I think it was orientation. Uh-huh. I walked into the high school and I about ended up passing out. I got so nervous. My anxiety just shot through the roof, except for I didn't know I had anxiety. And so... Yeah,
you're wondering, what's going on with me?
Yeah. I totally did. I felt nauseous, just about passed out. I called my mom and I was like, I feel super, super sick. And I did. That was the thing, is I was like, my anxiety had bumped up to the point that I was physically sick. Yeah, wow. But I didn't know that. I just was like, maybe I have something,
Right.
I don't know. When I was a sophomore, I think it's when I was a sophomore in high school, I ended up getting ulcers because I would stress so much because my anxiety would kick in. And again, my parents didn't think to have me tested or do anything.
Right.
And didn't recognize it. And neither did I. And so, I look back at high school and there's so many times when I'm like, oh, that was such an ADD symptom, ADD kicking in right there.
Right. Uh-huh.
One of the harder things is I would watch my stepbrother, and he's a year younger than me, and he just excelled at school. He was on the basketball team. He was pulling a 4.0, and everybody loved him. And I was like, how does he pull this off?
Right.
How does he rock this? And then there's me. I'm the flighty blonde tennis player, and I was a good student, but I wasn't. I ended up pulling a 3.2, which isn't bad. I mean, that's sure. Fairly decent. But I've looked back at it a billion gazillion times, and I'm like, man, if I would have studied like I did in college, I would have had a 4.0. But there was so many things that I was working against. And one of the things that I see in my students and how they describe it too is it's like they can never keep up.
Right.
and I remember that in both high school and college, is that I would watch my friends who are in the exact same program, taking the exact same classes, and they'd be taking more credits, or they'd be able to hold down a job and be able to do school and do it well. And I was like, why can't I keep up?
Yeah.
And so I think it started a mindset of I'm stupid. Even though I knew I wasn't dumb, like you kind of feel dumb because you can't, I'd watch my brother, for instance, pull out math classes, English classes, and all these other classes, and he would do it and wouldn't spend nearly the time on homework.
Right.
And he was way more dedicated. Like he would come home and he would do his homework after like school and basketball practice and whatnot. And he would sit down and do his homework. And then he was just so disciplined. And it was so hard for me to do that. Like I could never just be like, okay, I'm going to do my homework now.
Right.
And it's almost hard to describe, but it's like your brain's so scattered. It's like you're a squirrel or you're chasing after a squirrel.
Yeah.
And so it makes you feel like you're like, I know I'm as smart as this other person, but at the same time. And so I think that's a lot of where my mindset started, was actually probably more so in high school and college, of this mindset of like, I'm not good enough, or that I'm stupid, or that I can't learn.
Right. Yeah. And those are difficult things. And so as you were going through that, what were some things that, I mean, were you just feeling like you're on your own trying to figure this out? I mean, did you have any help? Maybe your mom or dad were trying to help from a distance. I don't know. How were you dealing with that and coping with that as you were going through this?
So in high school, a lot of times, like I know my mom wouldn't always understand why I would have emotional outbursts. She kind of would be like, why are you such a teenager?
Going on? Right.
Yeah. And I was never a rebellious teen. Did I like go and do some things that, my parents didn't necessarily were like, yeah, you can't go here. And then I went there, Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I never did any alcohol or drugs in school. I wasn't out, partying and doing that type of thing. It just wasn't in my nature, which is really funny, because I know that can be kind of typical.
Right.
But honestly, I mean, I was a good kid. I just was a little bit flighty. I like to be around my friends and have those connections. And not knowing that you have ADHD when you're in high school, not knowing that I had anxiety that was associated with that, I just had no idea.
Right.
Well,
it sounds like you were feeling like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Why can't I be like this person? Why can't I do this? So ultimately what I hear you're saying, and I think this is very common, again, something's wrong with me. I'm not good enough. And you even mentioned even as far as saying, I feel stupid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It could probably the mindset or the way it comes out verbally is, oh, so-and-so's so smart. Like they're way smarter than me.
Right.
It's not like I'm dumb. It's just everybody's smarter than me, or they're faster than me. They're whatever.
Right.
Honestly, sports were a saving grace for me in high school. I had an amazing PE teacher, an English teacher, and I had her for a PE coach, and she was also the tennis coach, and she saw me play pickleball of all things.
Yeah.
And which at the time, she was way before her time, because, pickleball wasn't big like it is now.
Yeah.
And she saw me playing pickleball, and she's like, hey, come try out for the tennis team. And so I went and asked my parents about it, and between my tennis coach and myself, convinced them to let me play tennis. And so tennis and volleyball were in my life through high school.
Okay.
And that really was a saving grace for me, because
it's kind of like an outlet, right? I can get rid of this pent up energy and this feeling and take it out on the ball,
Yeah. And it's just fun. Like I still love sports, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's movement for somebody who's ADHD is fun.
Now, you said you noticed as a teacher, you would notice your students had going through some of the same things and this and that. What were you able to do to help these kids, just as you watch them kind of go through this?
As a teacher, it's a little bit more challenging because, again, just by law, I can't say, hey,
right.
your kid has ADHD. So I would try teaching in a way that was more hands-on. I'm a hands-on person. I learn more by moving.
Sure.
And so I tried to make my classroom more that way, so that I think anybody learns better by movement and
for sure
more hands-on. It becomes more of an emotional thing and more of a memory than just like, oh, let's read a book and fill out some questions.
Yeah.
So I would try and make my class more hands-on, more project-based, because then your ADHD kids can not excel, but they're going to be more in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that's one thing I did. I would end up talking to some of them one-on-one because they would open up to me.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had one specific girl, and she had been a dancer, and then she quit dancing in high school, and there was some different things around that. But she literally said, she was like, well, I'm just not as smart, and I can't keep up.
Oh, wow.
And I just was like,
you can totally relate
I
with that.
know how that feels.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because a lot of times ADHD people, and even myself now, sometimes it's hard to explain exactly what it feels like. But when somebody knows what it feels like and starts talking about it, you can recognize it, because nobody can explain it that way unless they're in it.
Exactly.
And I feel like it would probably be that way, whether it be anxiety, depression, somebody who's been through a divorce, somebody who's been through a death, any of those things. I think if you've been through it, you can talk to somebody else and be able to connect that way.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's not 100% the same, but there's probably some similarities.
Right.
And so unless you've experienced, a parent dying or a child dying, or experienced death in those ways, or been through a divorce, or in this case, ADHD, or had depression or anxiety, it's hard to understand what somebody's really feeling unless you've been there.
Yeah, exactly. No. And, we talked about in the beginning that you kind of almost label yourself a recovering perfectionist.
Yeah.
I think because of those, anxiety and ADHD kind of fueled that as well. Talk a little bit about that.
The perfectionist thing is kind of an interesting dynamic, because being flighty and ADHD and not having this great GPA, you're like, well, how can you be a perfectionist? And it's more a perfectionist mindset. Like sometimes it's like you don't start doing things because if you can't do it perfect,
then why start?
Then it like just kind of dams the progress there.
Yeah.
A lot of the perfection really came in the mindset of I'm not good enough. And so it's kind of hard to relate how that and perfection work together, but it's just, you kind of want to have these perfect relationships. I saw it, especially the perfectionist, in my relationships, especially my dating and my marriage.
Okay.
I had these expectations of this is what it was supposed to be. This is what I wanted it to be. And I was very, very critical of others, which is funny because I'm like fun-loving and very accepting of everyone.
Right.
But then at the same time, I would be super critical of guys that I was dating.
Right.
They had to be what I considered perfect, my standard of perfect. So what I've kind of come to realize is that perfection that I was throwing on everyone else was more kind of what I expected of myself.
Yeah.
And so then when you're not perfect, when you don't meet your own perfection standard, then you start playing a lot of mental games.
Sure. I've heard it said this, and I thought it was really profound. Perfectionism is just covered up fear.
Oh, totally.
Right. Just a good way to put it. Right.
Yeah.
And I think because, like you said, if I can't do it perfect, I'm not even going to start doing it. And then when you actually are doing something, you feel this anxiety, like, man, I've got to be the best at this, and it better work out the way it needs to. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And it still, it'll kick in even now, and I'll have to kind of catch it and curb it.
Right.
but it's definitely something that I've like recognized in myself and then gone, oh, okay. Like I've had to have a change of mindset. It took some help to do that. Interestingly enough, it took a family nurse practitioner.
Oh, really?
And a life coach, to kind of change that. Yeah. Which is a whole another story in and of itself. But yeah, it was that change of mindset where I really saw that coming out was when I was going through my separation and my divorce.
Right.
And I just decided to go see a counselor because I kind of was like, well, I'm already at the bottom of this, and I didn't think I needed counseling. That's what's really funny about it.
Right.
Here I am in my 30s, and I like looking back, I'm dealing with some really serious mindset issues, but I didn't think I had any issues. Like,
right.
I just was like, no, it's just tough, but I'm fine.
But I'm good. Yeah.
But I'm good. Yeah. And completely had wrecked this relationship, my own doing. And I'm like, well, I'll go to counseling because that just seems like what you should do,
Yeah.
There comes the perfectionist kind of side of things.
Right.
And I was like, well, what can it hurt,
Sure.
Can't hurt anything at this point.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going to a couple of different counselors. It took a minute to kind of find one that I clicked with. And a couple of them I went to, and I just was like, okay, you're telling me, like, I don't feel like it makes a difference or anything. And then I went to this one, and she's like, well, let's have your blood work checked and just make sure that your hormones are normal. And
right, yeah.
And I hadn't even really thought of that, but it made so much sense after she said it. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do that. And so I went to, she recommended this family nurse practitioner and said, hey, this is who I like to send a lot of my clients to. She'll do the blood work up for you. She's awesome. And I was like, okay. So, I schedule an appointment, go in, don't think anything about it really. And they did my blood work. And on that first visit, I remember crying on the table because she could talk ADHD.
Yeah.
And I still get emotional about it now because nobody had been able to relate.
Yeah.
See, I get teary about it now. But nobody had been able to speak that way to me before.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, let's try medication. And at the time I said no. I was like, I don't know. I wasn't comfortable with it. I had learned that I had ADHD when I was about probably a freshman or sophomore when I was in college. So I knew I had it and I'd learned about it. But I still wasn't comfortable with the whole drugs thing.
Right.
Ritalin kind of had this stigma with it.
For sure.
And I'll be honest, I'm glad that I missed the Ritalin stage of ADHD medication. I had I actually have several family members that ended up on that. And I didn't want to deal with some of the effects of the drugs.
Right.
And so I was really, really resistant to actually going on medication. And so about a year and a half later, I was like, well, if I'm going to make things better, I'll give it a go.
Right.
And so I went into her, and I'm still on a very low dose of it now. I'll be honest, I don't take it every day, as it's prescribed to me.
Prescribed to, yeah.
But it's a really, really low dose. But it was a game changer.
Yeah.
And so, is medication the right thing for every person that has ADHD? Absolutely not. But it can definitely be a good supplement for some people.
Yeah.
And so,
well, talk about, you got emotional there for when you were talking about how it was almost like for the first time you were talking to someone that truly understood what you were going through.
Yeah.
And how that just affected you. So
the funny thing about it is she's ADHD. And she's a doctor. And so, I guess in my mind's eye, my mind's eye, that made her a more valid source because she had a medical background.
Right.
But she literally spoke ADHD. And so that's why I'm even more so a believer of sometimes you don't know unless you know.
Yeah.
Because she just was able, she's like, do you ever feel like this? And described all these things that I was like, you don't know that. Like nobody had been able to talk to me like that.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it validated the way I felt.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm just ADHD. And oh my gosh, somebody knows how to speak that language, but can also speak the medical language and say, and again, this comes back to the point of I've been teaching health, medical anatomy for like years, medical terminology for all these years.
Right,
and so the combination of those two was very, very helpful for me because she was able to describe how I felt and then say, oh yeah, and here's some, you know, it wasn't just somebody off the street being like, oh yeah, I suffer with ADHD and, you know, I can't make decisions very well, you know.
Right.
And so for a medical person to be able to describe how I felt was a big deal.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just kind of like finally someone gets this and where I'm going through, you know, as I'm hearing you talk and you know, and knowing you for a while now and actually seeing you in action at Brighton and seeing you teach, like I said earlier, you know, as I'm sitting here listening to you talk about what you were going through, and I say this a lot to my clients who have, you know, they've been diagnosed bipolar or ADHD or with anxiety or depression, and the list goes on, and I'll say, well, that's your superpower. And
it truly is.
Because as hard as it's been for you to go through this, and again, I'm not trying to minimize to anyone who has these challenges that it's not hard. It's hard. But sometimes we wonder, why am I going through this? But look what you do now and how it's caused you to really work on your mindset. And now you teach that to other people and it made you a much better teacher, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, so it's really your superpower. Why do we go through these things? So you can learn from it and then turn around and help someone else who's going through it as well.
Oh, absolutely. I know, speaking to ADHD, another way that it's a superpower is I have boundless amounts of energy. Right. And so, like literally in the fitness world, I mean, super helpful because I'm always like, oh, I'm moving. And as in a teaching aspect, I'm a mover and a shaker. I'm like always moving around the room. I'm talking with my hands.
You don't sit behind your desk. You're moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm always... you know, I'm like the dog, the Australian shepherd that is like just happy to be there, but just is like, oh, there's a ball, there's a frisbee, okay, let's go.
Let's do this.
And so, yeah. And I my students are amazing because sometimes I think that I teach, well, I know that sometimes I teach in this ADHD fashion where it's like, look over here, look over there, look over here, you know, and so they're super patient with me sometimes, but but you also learn to manage some of that. But yeah, it's like you say, it's a blessing and a curse sometimes.
I think it's a blessing. I think it's your superpower, despite the challenges you've gone through, because I think you're so good at what you do because of it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
So one of the things with my FNP that was so amazing, is that she also is very, very strong in the mindset. Right. And she actually works with a life coach and works with several different life coaches. And she was the one who first started teaching me about mindset. So literally we're in her doctor's office and she's like, okay, I think you're in a spot where you're open to hearing this. And she taught me about affirmations. Yeah. And she's like, I want you to say these things. And I still have the paper that she wrote on in her doctor's office. And it's sitting in my car. And it's literally still on my dashboard. And since then, like I've changed my affirmations a little bit. Right. And I've changed different things that I work on. But really, I go back to that because it was my initial introduction. And it's this really nice reminder of when I need to go back as far as working on my mindset. I just go back and kind of look at those things she wrote down. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's this simple. Right. You know? And so, yeah, she literally had me wrote out 3 affirmations for me. And she's like, I want you to go home and say these every day. And I was like, and it was such this bizarre feeling. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I'll try it. And it was so awkward. Very, very awkward. I'll be honest.
Sure.
And those first 3 affirmations were like, I am good enough. I am of value. And there was one other one. Anyway, I don't remember at this moment in time what it is. But she literally was like, go home and say these. And I was like, really? Do I have to? Like, this seems weird. And I didn't really think that those were necessarily issues until I started having to say them.
Right.
And then I was like, oh. Like, you can feel the resistance.
Right.
Because you're like, I don't even want to say that out loud. It feels weird. And yeah, and you can literally physically kind of feel this resistance to it. But it really does. As you start doing it, as I started practicing it, I started noticing that I felt different. And then I started, we started changing it up a little bit. And so to make it more, the affirmations more specifically to where I had some of those very specific beliefs.
Right.
But I have to say, I do like those, like, I'm good enough.
Right.
I think, because I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah. I think that's the number, in my experience in doing this for 30 years, meeting with clients, I think the number one irrational limiting belief that we buy into is I'm not good enough.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think everyone can, who's listening to this right now can relate. Yeah, I've had that mindset at times where I just don't feel good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was really perpetrated by this idea of I'm not smart enough.
Yeah.
That started clear back when I was in high school, and even in college, and especially in college. Like, I literally remember walking on campus one day up at Utah State. Go Aggies. I'm a huge Aggie fan. But I was literally walking across the campus in front of the PE building, and I remember seeing one of my friends that was in the similar program to me, and at the time, he was taking 18 to 21 credits a semester, holding down a job, and was getting good grades. He was like a 3.8.
Right.
And I remember literally walking across campus, seeing him, and like, why can't I keep up? Like, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
And really struggling with that, because it took so much longer to write papers. It took so much more effort to just even sit down and do anything.
Right.
That had anything to do with writing or reading, that type of thing.
Sure.
Movement, as far as movement goes, I was an exercise science major. So anytime they threw you out in a field or in a gym or, on the floor, I'm like, oh, I can move. I can do this,
Yeah, sure.
I'm on fire. Right. But then tell me, oh, you got to write a paper with that. And I couldn't understand why I just couldn't do it. Even though at that point I knew I had ADHD. I was self-medicating with exercise and caffeine. So, yeah. There you go. Mountain Dew. I hate Mountain Dew now. It's because I pounded it in college.
You had too much of that. You're like, I'm done. Oh, my
gosh. Okay. Yeah. But I remember having those exact thoughts.
That's funny.
And then, fast forward to this time, 10, years later. And I think that a lot of those I'm not good enough kind of started at a much more base level of why can't I keep up? Why can't I do this? Why am I not as smart? And then as that continued, I would see people in their careers, like they could get jobs faster, hold down jobs faster, do their jobs better.
Right.
Paperwork and me are not great friends. I don't know anybody that is maybe great with paperwork. Because paperwork
doesn't move fast enough.
It doesn't. I'm like, oh, it's so painful.
Sure.
So painful.
Sure,
I need a secretary for life.
Right, exactly.
My
so
life secretary. Right. And so I just, so all of these things adding up, there's other people that could take on more tasks, whether that was in their careers or even in their relationships, and just in life. Like, I'm like, this person can hold down their job, be a mom, and do all these things. And I'm doing barely like surviving, just holding down a job. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it just, I think a lot of that built up over time, and it became very ingrained. And I didn't even realize I was doing it.
Yeah.
And
and that's, well, so, what do you do on a daily basis now? I mean, you do those affirmations, which is great, and I'm a big believer of that as well. What are some other things you do to kind of help you stay in that healthy mindset?
So I've always been into exercise.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, just because I had so much boundless amounts of energy,
Right.
PE came easy. I got into sports. And so, like I said, that was a great outlet for me on all different, mental, emotional, everything. When I got into college, like I said, I started self-medicating with caffeine. I don't do that as much, although I will admit that I still do it. This is where I will throw in my little health teacher point of don't do Adderall and caffeine at the same time. Don't do any ADHD medication and caffeine because it's a stimulant. Like, don't mix drugs. That's just not your wisest choice.
Right.
I'll be honest. This morning, not every morning, but I usually take some type of medication. This morning,
Sure.
I had caffeine. They have caffeinated water. It's amazing. You can find it at Walmart. I just barely found it like this past month. And so when I'm not taking my Adderall, or I just need a little bit of a pick-me-up, I'm very, very careful about my caffeine consumption, but I'll usually have something that can kind of, caffeine has the opposite effect on an ADHD mind than it does on the normal person. It has the opposite effect, actually. The best way to put it is it makes it so that your mind can be calm and clear. And so instead of like having your thoughts go 100 miles an hour where you're thinking about, oh, I got to do this, and then I got to go over here and this, and then, that thinking, oh, I got to feed my horse, then takes you to, oh, but I didn't feed the dog. Oh, I need to take the dog to the vet. And then, you know what I mean? And literally, instead of you having 20 million thoughts that you're bouncing in between and never finishing one of them, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can just sit here and think about one thing. So I like to, as far as morning routines, a lot of times I will take something, whether that's, some caffeine, whatever and whatnot. And then, like I said, the other thing that I'm a huge proponent of is physical activity. So I'll try and work out, go running. It varies a little bit on the day.
Right.
But I think it's very, very important for that movement, which is a whole nother aspect that we could chat about. But then I say those positive affirmations 3 times a day. Not 3 times a day, sorry. I have 3 affirmations that I say, in the morning. And I'll be honest, I'm not really great about my morning routine. Sometimes I get on it and I do it really well every day, and then things will change up, and then I kind of get off. And
so you're human.
Yeah, crazy.
Yes. Yeah.
And ADHD, we're not really great about doing scheduled things.
The thing is you're striving. You're trying. You're doing. What I hear from you, and again knowing you for a while, you're doing your best. And that's kind of what you do.
Yeah.
You're just like, I'm going to do my best today.
Yeah.
And I saw that when you were teaching the kids and that kind of thing. And again, that's the way you live your life. And that's why you, again, like I said, you're good at what you do. Is you're not perfect, right? But you're doing your best. And I think that's a great message that our listeners need to understand. Is if you're doing your best, that's the key. Do your best today.
Yeah.
All right. If you didn't do your morning affirmations and you missed them, okay, so what?
Yeah.
It's okay. You're going to be okay. Say them later today or do them tomorrow morning. But just do your best today. That's kind of what I'm hearing from you. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And I think kind of along those, one of the things with mindset that I learned was a lot of times we should ourselves to death.
Yes.
And so that was one
Should've
of
the.
I should have done that. And I see that, like you're talking about, like, yeah, we're human and we're trying our best. And a lot of times, and I found that with myself, especially with the perfectionist thing, I should be this.
Yeah.
I should be that. And you put a lot of shame and guilt on the fact that you didn't say your affirmations that day, or you didn't, say your prayers, or you didn't work out, or you didn't eat this. And you end up with a lot of shame and guilt, even sometimes when it's not so much outwardly, inwardly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do, oh, I should have worked out this morning.
Yeah.
And I have to really catch myself on the shoulds, because that's where I feel like my perfection sneaks in.
Yeah. Well, that's really what that is, right? Yeah. It's like, why can't I be perfect?
Yeah.
Basically is what you're saying.
Yeah. There's days when I know I should work out and I don't. And I'll literally be like, if I just only would have gone and done it, like I should have worked out. I know that I would have felt better. I know that I would have, blah, 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 blah. We all do that. And, and as a fitness advocate and professional, me of all people, I'm like, oh, I should have worked out because I know better, because I've been doing this for so long, And I also kind of go, well, I know it makes me feel better because I'm ADHD, and I know when I run, I feel better. Or if I go lift weights, I'll feel better. And so then why didn't I go lift this morning?
Yeah.
Why didn't I just do it? I should have, and yeah, I think a lot of us spend a lot of time shooting ourselves, and then we end up with a lot of that shame and guilt kind of riding in.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's like one of the first things right after I did the 3 affirmations, my FNP, when I went in for a follow-up doctor's appointment. It's funny because we would just meet for doctor's appointments, blood work and real stuff. And then we'd end up talking mindset for about an hour. But that was one of the next things that she had me do, was realizing how much I said should.
Yeah.
And then recognizing the guilt and shame that came along with all of those should statements.
Right.
And so for the first month or so, she referred me over to a life coach that she was really close friends with. And so I worked with that life coach as well, which was super beneficial. And that was one of the things that this life coach and both the FNP were like, had me do that first month when I started doing life coaching, was just focusing on taking should out of my vocabulary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I know, like I said, my phone will go off.
You're like,
time.
no one's going to call you this early in the morning.
Right.
And here we are.
There's that one time.
No, that's no problem. Well, if someone who's listening to this right now, who may be going through the same things that you've been going through or have gone through, they're struggling with anxiety, or they're struggling with, I think I need to be perfect. And so therefore they believe maybe on some level they're not good enough. What advice could you give them who might be listening to this right now?
Yeah. I really am a huge believer in the affirmations. I've really seen the value in, as you say those affirmations, even if you don't feel it to begin with, if it feels awkward. And it's not only that it feels awkward, it's you don't believe it. Right. You're not feeling it. I remember at some point for me, I didn't believe that I was lovable. If you have being single for a long time, you start to believe like there's been all these failures along the way, and yes, they're learning points, whatever, Sure. But you're like, at the end of the day, they still failed. So, I remember one of my affirmations at some point was, I am lovable. And I remember saying that and not believing it.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm saying this, but it's not true.
So you immediately discount it.
Yeah. And so I guess what I would say is do it anyway.
Right.
Because eventually you're going to change the way you think. You can change the way you think.
Right.
And it really starts with starting to addressing what we like to call truths, right? We have are these limiting beliefs, because when you start saying it, then you can start opening your heart and your mind to actually being able to believe it. And then once you get to a point where you're open to it, then you can honestly start seeing the world and as it is.
Right. Wow. That's great advice, and I'm a huge believer of that as well. I do affirmations as well, and I remember when I first did them too, I didn't believe them, but I do now, and I think the affirmations actually really are the truth, even in the beginning when you don't believe them. It's just the truth,
Yeah.
you know, because you are a good person, you are lovable, you do matter. You're
Right.
smart, you're brilliant, you're talented, you're kind, you're wise, you're loving, you're light, you're energy. That's who you really are, you know?
Yep.
And me even being able to rub shoulders with you just a little bit over the years, I see that from you.
Well, thank you.
No, and I mean that. And so I'm grateful that you came, and willing to share and be vulnerable with us today and share some insight on your life. And it's been very good for me to kind of hear a little more detail of your life, some background. And I really appreciate you actually more now than I did before.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think for me, as I started to see this more in myself, where it went back to is I thought, man, if I could have started doing this when I was like a teenager or in college, there's a lot of heartache I could have avoided. And I've noticed a lot of those things in my students, but I didn't know how to address them. So as I started learning about changing mindsets and things like that, it really opened my eyes to my students. And that's one of the things that I started trying to practice a little bit. Granted, with only a semester of health and public education, you can only do so much. But I started doing affirmations with them and just hoping to open the door a little bit to
absolutely plant those seeds. And
yeah. And what was sad and what kind of has cemented this whole idea that they really need that is I would have kids come up to me and they'd be like, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I had at the time she was a junior over at Brighton High School, and this absolutely lovely young lady, super cute blonde girl, and her friends liked her, and she seemed to be doing really well. She was taking some harder classes, she was doing well in school, and I just remember her in my class, and we did this little exercise with affirmations, and she's like, and she came up to me after class, and she was like, but what if it's not true? And so I, had her I said, okay, so what did you write down? What are 3 things that, you wrote down that you wanted to try and change your mindset on? And one of them, I don't remember. It wasn't I'm not good enough, but it was essentially that. It was a similar type of thought process. And it was something like I am a good person or something along those lines, And she's like, I don't believe it. And she's like, my dad would tell you that I'm not a good person. And it blew me away because she's like, I've written it down, and she's like, I'd like to believe, but what if I'm really not? And so I would see that hers was very easy to see because she came openly up to me and talked about it.
Right.
But I would see it in other students as well because they would just, it was in their behavior, or a lot of times it was how they would speak verbally, that they didn't feel like they were good enough for whatever reason. But, and they honestly, or that they were failures or things along those lines. And I would just see it. And I was like, I can see in my classroom, and these students are amazing.
Right.
They're just these amazing individuals. And so it made me want to be like, can you not see who you are?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough to watch.
And you're doing awesome. Yeah. You're doing awesome,
Yeah, that's tough. I always ask my client when they say they don't believe they're good enough, I'll say, well, prove it to me. And they sit there and they look at me like, what? I'm like, well, prove it to me. You think you're not good enough, prove it.
Oh, a teen would definitely come back with a response for that one. No. Really?
Yeah, prove it. And they'll try to think of something, but they really like, well, I really can't prove it. And I'm like, well, what does that mean then? And I like that. It's a powerful way of getting them to go. And what it does is it points out, it's just a story you're telling yourself. That's all it is. because there's no proof to back that up. Now, it doesn't mean you're a perfect person. We all have stuff we need to work on.
Yeah.
But to your core, really, ultimately, there's nothing wrong with you. That's why you can't show me or prove to me that you're unlovable or you're not good enough or you're not worthy.
Yeah.
And it's a really powerful way to do that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's powerful.
I'm going to throw that into my bag
So-
of tricks.
So, if someone wanted to reach out to you, that is hearing this and I would love to ask Tedi a question because I'm going through the exact same thing, or what would be the best way, whatever you're comfortable with, that they could reach out to you and ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all over social media.
Okay.
And I think that that's a really popular way to get a hold of people.
Yep. It seems to be the way to go nowadays.
I know, right? I am on Facebook. I have a couple of different things. So I'm, Tedi Searle. It's like Facebook.com.
Spell that out for everybody.
Yeah, it's TEDI and then Searle, SEARLE. And on Instagram, it's The Endorphin Junkie.
Yeah.
And that kind of comes back to those ADHD ties of I'm always trying to find stuff that's going to make you happy,
right?
The good endorphins. And so
that
movement mindset.
I love it.
And so that's where that name came from. Actually, one of my coworkers, when I was teaching at Brighton, she's like, "You're not an adrenaline junkie." She's like, "You're an endorphin junkie." Yeah. And so that's where that came from, and it stuck. I'm on Instagram as the Endorphin Junkie. And then, people are always free to reach out to me. I'm in the process of redoing my blog. And so we're in the process of changing the name for that. So otherwise I'd say go to this website, but we're in the process of changing that, but that's going to be coming soon. And I'm actually really excited. I'm in the process. We're about to put out, I say we, because I have several other people that are helping me with it. But I have a book that we're writing, and it's all health questions that my students have asked over the years, and they write them down on 3x5 cards. And so we're in the process of making that a book.
Awesome. Yeah.
But I just literally just kind of came about over the last month is I'm going to be doing a social media and make the website. So it's Ask a Health Teacher.
Love it.
And so,
yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So on my Facebook, I also have a group that's, or a page that's going to be Ask the Health Teacher.
Right on.
And so,
very cool.
Yeah. Hopefully it will help,
help
parents so that if they'd like to have ideas about what their teens are asking and want to know about health-wise, different questions.
It's a great idea. Love it.
That they can reach out. And then also, it gives a place. I'd like to open it up so that teens can come and basically ask, hey, I have a question about this. And do I have all the answers? Absolutely not. But I'm willing to go help them find those answers.
Love it.
And so.
Well, I hope people will reach out to you because you do have a lot of knowledge. You've been through a lot. I want to thank you for taking the time to come on this Belief Cast and share your amazing story and how you live your life and also being vulnerable and sharing some challenges that you've gone through. Most of my listeners will relate, and I'm grateful that you're willing to come do that. You're going to help a lot of people, and I'm just glad that you're willing to do this, and I'm grateful to know you, Tedi, and thanks for giving me opportunities to come speak to your students as well. It's been a blessing in my life as well, so thank you so much. And
likewise.
Thanks for being on here today.
Oh, I love it. Thanks. This has been so fun.
Yeah, it's been great. Well, there you go, listeners. Another amazing story from another great person. Thank you once again for tuning in. Please share this with people that you know, especially those that are struggling with ADD or ADHD and anxiety and really ultimately the belief that they may not be good enough, because the truth is you are. And I want you guys to know I love you. Thank you for supporting this. It truly is. It's grown to a place that I, in the beginning, never thought imaginable, but it's because we got amazing people like Tedi to come on and share their stories. So to all of you, I love you. Until next time. All right. Thanks, Tedi.
Thank you.